Hello, everyone. How are you doing? This is Daryl Guberman, CEO of Guberman PMC LLC, a quality consulting firm here in Connecticut. The rest of the data will be down below in the description of this video and additional information concerning this video. This video was based on an article that we just read, just came out, about how will layoffs affect Sikorsky aircraft. I added to it, and this video's title is How Will Layoffs Affect Bell Helicopter And Sikorsky? QA Authority Daryl Guberman Explains. Let me just give you a little bit of background before I introduce to you some of these gentlemen who are waiting in the wings so very patiently. I have a BS degree in business management from Southeastern University in Washington, D.C. I have 10 technical certificates that ultimately ended up to be 5 diplomas from the Materials Engineering Institute in Menlo Park, Ohio. And they run the Materials Engineering Institute. The diplomas were comprised of the following certificate courses: aluminum and its alloys, corrosion, Composites 1, the basics, Composites 2, material and selection, principles of metallography, titanium and its alloys, principles of failure analysis, fundamentals of non-destructive testing, welding inspection and quality control, mechanical testing of metals. The diplomas out of those certificates were the following: Composite Engineering Technology Diploma, Non-Ferrous Metallurgy Diploma, Testing and Inspection Diploma, Welding Metallurgy Diploma, and also Applied General Metallurgy. Hardcore Learning Center, Scranton, Pennsylvania certificate programs, level 1 and 2 in plastics, films, sheets, foams, and laminates. Plastics and adhesives and coatings, certificate industrial plastics. I have a certificate in hazardous waste from Clean Harbors in Bristol, Connecticut. I also have a certificate in quality management, CQM, from Rensselaer Polytechnical Institute in Hartford, Connecticut. I also have a certificate, a diploma in advanced UV cured and water-based materials from Flexcon, Worcester, Massachusetts. And the final item is from the North Atlantic NDT in Branford, Connecticut, Certified Level 2 Penetrant Inspector. I wanted to give this to you, business owners, because I felt it only right for you to understand who I am and who's talking to you. I don't mean in any way to brag that education is okay, but personality is everything and more important, because I have the opportunity to educate business owners, simplifying technical, hard issues, whether it's standards or blueprints, and make them more palatable and understandable for those business people. And I've done that all over the country. I wanted to also tell you the background of what happened here to me, but let me introduce you to the gentlemen who are waiting in the wings. I don't want to keep them too long. You have Mr. James Tassett, CEO from Lockheed Martin. You have Mr. Paul Lemo, president from Sikorsky Lockheed, or Lockheed Sikorsky. Here he is. You have Mr. Scott Donnelly, Textron CEO. Thank you for coming, Scott. You also have Mitch Snyder, the CEO and president and CEO of Bell Helicopter, which I warned several weeks ago that because of affiliations of Sikorsky Lockheed or Lockheed Sikorsky and Boeing Defiant SB-1, and Mitch Snyder's presentation of the V-280 Valor from Bell, and they initially won it, but Lockheed, Sikorsky, and Boeing went back to the government, and now it is up to the Government Accounting Office to do the final kibosh in April. And the way this article was written, the way this news reporter reported it, it sounds a little bit improper, with actually Bell or Textron warning the shareholders to basically hold back a little bit, don't buy the shares, in so many words, and you will hear that. I am not making this up. Let me continue. Let me get Jim Tassett. Jim Tassett, here he is. Jim Tassett and Lockheed Martin's chief financial officer cited increased Sikorsky orders as a contributing reason for Lockheed Martin hitting a record $150 billion backlog entering this year of 2023. Is this, and then they talk about layoffs, okay? And you wonder what the heck, a backlog of $150 billion. And they're going to have layoffs at their here it is. It's right here. Lockheed Martin, nevertheless, reserved $100 million late last year in 2022 to pay for job cuts or transfers out of its Rotary and Mission Systems division that includes Sikorsky and several other businesses. The company did not provide any immediate estimates for how Sikorsky could be affected in the restructuring. And this is what gets your goat here. Textron, the Providence, Rhode Island-based parent of Bell, included the possibility of an Army reversal among the risks investors need to factor into any purchase of its stock as part of Securities and Exchange Commission on Wednesday. The simple fact is, business owners, is the Securities and Exchange Commission sits on ANSI, right over by Lockheed, Sikorsky, and Boeing, and the FAA and FBI, etc. Isn't that a tender moment? That sounds a little bit like manipulation. Like if I want to buy a Bell stock, now I've got to think about it first and say, well, should I or shouldn't I? That restrains the ability for Bell and Textron to get more monies in for research and development and whatever they do with the stock funds. But let's continue on with this. So, as I said, this video today is about how will layoffs affect Bell Helicopter and Sikorsky. QA Authority Explains. Well, first you're looking at this mess behind me, I'm sure, that says half a nut fuck you. You've seen it in every video. It was said to me by a Russ Cheney, a chairman of the American National Standards Institute, a 104-year-old company that not only makes standards up, but they also certify. They're an accreditation body. Isn't that nice? They metamorphosized into that. What happened is I exposed a factor of an accreditation body for laboratory back in 2019. And a woman at the accreditation body, A2LA, and I said that they're sitting on ANSI's board right over by the sheriff's departments and other forensic laboratories that they certify. So it's like the fox watching the hen house. There is no oversight. So I did that video. And then she said, well, ANSI and A2LA are separate entities unto themselves. They're separate. They aren't together. I showed her differently with another video. That night, okay, right after that video came out, this is what Russ Cheney called me up, and I'll play it for you. Yes, that's exactly what he said. Half a nut fuck you. To make matters worse is that you have, hold on a second, let me get these guys out here. You have Jim Tassett, one of his individuals, sits on ANSI. ANSI itself, actually, Lockheed sits on ANSI. So what is it saying about Jim as a CEO? He allows that type of language from an organization he sits on? Not only that, he's coming out too pretty soon as David Calhoun from Boeing. They too sit on ANSI's board, okay? And do they condone this type of language? So what happened is, I checked into it a little bit because I didn't know who Russ Cheney was, and we found out that he was the chairman of the board. That's like Jim Tassett saying half a nut fuck you. That is like David Calhoun saying half a nut fuck you. That's like... it's just unbelievable. That's like Mr. Lemma from Sikorsky or Lockheed Sikorsky saying half a nut fuck you because their organizations belong on ANSI's board. So anyway, what I did was I wrote a letter. I sent the audio file to Mr. Joe Battia, the CEO of ANSI, and he sent it to their lawyer, James Carroll. So let me play this one more time, business owners, because you have to hear this mess.
Please leave a message and I'll return your call as soon
And you know what he said? He said, after analysis, we were unable to identify any harassing, objectionable content in the brief audio file provided. Yes. And I will say this as well. Because there's corporations and federal agencies that sit on ANSI, they all approve it. Yes, they do. They all approve it. There they are. Nice. The reason why I'm doing this is I want to let you know what Boeing and Lockheed are affiliated with. In fact, let me just tell you this story. Okay? It's not a story, it's fact. Several weeks ago, I did a video because an article came out that said after building 800 F-35s, Lockheed Martin still has quality deficiencies. And Lockheed sits on ANSI's board. At one time, they were sitting on the International Accreditation Forum when Communist China was ruling the roost between 2015 and 2021. In 2009, Lockheed Martin gets hacked by China, taking the F-35. In 2012, a division of United Technologies Sikorsky aircraft gets hacked by China, taking a lot of data. The Black Hawk, the T-700 engine, and other things. In 2015, Lockheed Martin purchases Sikorsky aircraft for $9 billion. And in the Connecticut Mirror, you'll see that as well. In the Connecticut Mirror, it states, with China's okay, Lockheed Martin closes in on the purchase of Sikorsky aircraft. And you have the four leading politicians in Connecticut. Rosa DeLauro, Jim Himes, Chris Murphy, and Richard Blumenthal said, hip, hip, hooray, Lockheed, you're working with Communist China. While conversely, and he's here too, you have Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, stating all the time under Senate subcommittee meetings, we must maintain our vigilance over China because it's a detriment to all of America's society. What the hell? Hey, Chris, did those four jokers get your memo? Probably not. So let's continue on. As I said, you have the Securities and Exchange Commission up there next to Lockheed and Boeing, and it was mentioned when Bell filed their forms about possibly, stockholders, shareholders, and others that want to buy Bell. Maybe you shouldn't. Well, I put out a video. It said Lockheed versus Boeing for stock. Who would you pick? And it said Daryl Guberman, Quality Authority, says Bell. Also, sitting on ANSI's board, and being watched over by Communist China between 2015 and 2021 is Boeing, Lockheed, federal agencies, and corporations. And by the way, let me go back and tell you about Jameson Carroll, the attorney for ANSI, who said he didn't hear anything. I received this email from a lawyer of 40 years, several years ago. And he said this, nearly everything you see when litigating in any court, federal or state, is an illusion. In the political world, we call it blue smoke and mirrors. The Merriam Dictionary states the definition of blue smoke and mirrors is something intended to disguise or draw attention away from an often embarrassing or unpleasant issue. I guess, have a nut, fuck you, right? So let's go. Here it is. You have ANSI, the American National Standards Institute, is a private, not-for-profit, non-governmental corporation that has both federal agencies and corporations on board. We're going to do a sidebar real quick. In 2022, June, there was an opening for a director at large in ANSI. So I put a 54-page document in because I figured that I could be a representative for small mom and pop shops, because if you look at their board, they have all big companies there. They have not one representative of a small mom and pop shop that supplies materials to these larger OEMs. So I said, after all this time and experience that I have in education, I might as well be a conduit to assist in doing so. And I'd love to change the mission statement that Russ Cheney, and as you heard, Russ Cheney's mission statement, my feeling is that that's what the quality that they dispense, because if you look at Lockheed Martin with the 800 discrepancies, After 800 aircraft, they still have discrepancies and rejections on the F-35. You look at Boeing, the 737 MAX, and you also see the 777 and 787 have quality issues. I think in the 787, I think Boeing had to spend $1 billion on rework because there were issues in quality. At the end of this, I get a letter from Joe Betty in the packet that I had to fill out, to submit to ANSI. Joe Betty, the CEO, said, "Thank you very much for being a nominee to ANSI's Director at Large." And he gave different things, and they had click links to their code of conduct. Do you call this a code of conduct? What does it say again about Boeing's CEO, David Calhoun, and also Jim Tassett, the Lockheed CEO, sitting on a board that extols half a nut fuck you? Unbelievable. So anyway, what happened is they had 9 questions at the end that I had to answer, is what I can do to facilitate Lockheed Martin's desires, dreams, and ambitions in the United States, and foreign and domestic, so to speak. So I wrote, I answered those questions to the best of my ability. And at the end of those questions, it said this: "The committee appreciates your interest in serving in an ANSI leadership position and your willingness to provide us with this additional information. Sincerely, Russ Cheney, chairman of the ANSI 2022 nominating committee." Do you think he's going to get me on board? No. They get the same people over and over again. They regurgitate them. So let's continue on. In 2015, Randy Doty, the vice president of ANAB, the chairman of the IAF, and also the principal on the IAF tax report, handed over leadership to this communist Chinese national Zhao Jinwu, who's been involved with our quality since 1994. He is mandated by his country of origin, Communist China, to take your data through the China National Intelligence Law, Article number 7. ANSI and ANAB took over. ANSI took over complete control over ANAB in 2018. They have federal agencies and corporations on board. Let's go back here. Zhao Jinwu is also the chief executive of the China National Accreditation Services, located in Beijing, China. He is also, in 2017, was seen in a photo in Wuhan, China, in the laboratory issuing the BioLevel 4 lab, that suspect to release of the COVID virus. He was seen issuing an ISO 17025 certification for laboratory. On top of this, in 2017, Randy Doty was being advertised on the Department of Homeland Security as the vice president of ANAB for the certain accreditation that they were issuing on the DHS. On top of it, there was a Phil Masterson from the DHS, who's a standard manager at the DHS, getting subsidized from ANSI, getting paid $262,000 as a royalty payment, okay? Going back, okay, you have Zhao Jinwu, okay, who gave this certificate to the BioLevel 4 lab. A Miss Pamela Sale, a vice president of accreditation for laboratory for ANSI, ANAB, and ASCLD lab, etc., stated under deposition that there is basically no protocol when it comes to laboratories. Doesn't matter what type of lab. There is no protocols. There is nothing to follow. It's an ad hoc type of quality, and you can't call it quality. They've had a lot of failures. In fact, she was doing the deposition because there was a massive failure in that lab. In 2015, the Department of Forensic Science, run by the FBI, Washington, D.C., got their certificate taken away because of glaring improprieties and processes. So basically, when you look at the function of the BioLevel 4 lab in Wuhan, China, and you listen to Pamela Sale, she basically confessed, yes, the virus did escape from that lab. Randy basically wrote a note about how great it was to have Zhao Jinwu involved with American quality and quality in general since 1994. You also have the factor that he is complimenting him about becoming the chairman of the IAF. There are 10 different organizations, registrars in China that can issue a quality control certificate, 10 of them. And you look at this and you say, wow, this is unbelievable stuff. Well, you continue on and you find out that ANSI and ANAB both sat between 2015 and 21 on the International Accreditation Forum Incorporated in Delaware. So Zhao Jinwu took that over in 2015 and 2021. You have ANSI and ANAB. Not only that, they're sitting right over by Pakistan and Iran on the IAF. And Pakistan and Iran are basically equivalent in accreditation to ANAB. So they can come over here if they want to do a certification audit, registration audit on Boeing, Sikorsky, Lockheed, whatever. They can come over here because they are equivalent in accreditation. But they also admitted to harboring some of the terrorists of 9/11. And you have Pakistan who harbored Osama bin Laden. Yet ANAB and ANSI ANAB and ANSI's board, I guess, condones the fact of terrorism. Absolutely. They sit there right over there. Maybe the board members don't know. Well, now they know. You also have the Federal Aviation Administration. This is a good one because in 2009, the FAA, sitting over by Boeing on ANSI, seceded inspection to Boeing, meaning that they could design, develop, fly, whatever they want to do with the 737 MAX. I'm sure they did it with the 777 and 787. At the time, if you asked them, they would say, probably at a cocktail party, we don't have enough people to go inspect them. Oh, but don't let that out of the bag. And that's what happened there. You also have the FBI sitting there. The FBI between 2015 and 2021. And let's introduce him. Here is Christopher Wray. Christopher Wray, yes, the badge that he has is probably made in China. His suit is made in China. Christopher Wray, the director of the FBI, always states this: the whole of the Chinese society is a threat to the U.S. and that Americans must step up to defend themselves. Well, we have a contract between the FBI and ANAB for 2016 that they signed a contract for certification laboratory certification. Isn't that a tender moment? We have that. If you want it, please contact me, 203-556-1493 or Daryl, TQRS at yahoo.com. And now we're going to introduce a special man. James Tassett of Lockheed and also Paul Lemma. Sikorsky Lockheed are both here. As I showed you, I introduced you to them before. They had to come up here, and thank you guys for coming, and let's get started. Lockheed Martin sits on ANSI. I showed you over by the Securities and Exchange Commission, the FBI, etc. They sit on ANSI. 2009, they got hacked, as I told you, by China. Here's the article. There are additional articles on top of that. Lockheed Martin sits at the time on the IAF, the International Accreditation Forum, and they sit, again, right over by Pakistan and Iran. Isn't that unbelievable? I don't say this about the people of those countries, I say it about its leadership. The worst thing is that Lockheed at the time was a associate member, which an associate member could vote on policy. And it looks like they kept Iran and Pakistan there. Also, they have a lot of quality issues. These were quality issues from several years ago. And also, they also have engine issues as well. I have all these reports. I don't make it up. So basically, you look at the the Defiant SB-1, a culmination of Boeing or Sikorsky Lockheed / Boeing, and already you're in the trash because Lockheed has an inherent issue. Number one, of course, not keeping their data straight. In 2009, they got hacked. In 2013, they collaborated with Bell Textron in the manufacture and design of the Valor V280. They, I guess, pulled out because they knew 2 years later they were going to purchase Sikorsky and then submit on their own the Defiant SB-1. Those technologies are counter-rotating and all the rest of that the SB-1 has been a technology around for many, many years. Do not think that it's super duper. It's been around for a long time. Now you have United Technologies, who got hacked in 2012. Sikorsky Aircraft got it and took a lot of information. In fact, and here's the article in the Connecticut Mirror. Here it goes. With China's okay, Lockheed Martin to close on Sikorsky purchase. But Connecticut lawmakers, this was in the article, but Connecticut lawmakers praise Lockheed Martin for clearing its last regulatory hurdle. Connecticut lawmakers Rosa DeLauro, Richard Blumenthal, Chris Murphy, Jim Himes praise our #1 military contractor, Lockheed Martin, for working with communist China, yet they didn't listen to they didn't listen to Christopher Wray. And people ask me, Daryl, how do you know they hacked it? You tell it, but you never show it. Well, let me show you. Here it is. Here's a collage of it, okay? Here's the F-35 made by Lockheed with 800 discrepancies, and they're still building the discrepancies. I guess the discrepancies go into the aircraft. In 2013, the Pentagon signed a waiver for China to build specialized magnets, I guess for the landing gear doors and some of the computer systems. They signed a waiver. This past year, they started to complain. Our Congress, some of them got the wind of it. How could we do it? Parts are being put into our military aircraft that are made in China. Well, we have a word in quality. A schmuck is a schmuck, of course. But nobody's a bigger schmuck, of course, unless you're the Pentagon in 2013. Oh my goodness. And then you have the Sikorsky Black Hawk. And here's the Chinese version. Isn't that a tender moment? And here we go, the man of the hour. David Calhoun, whose company in 2002 did a procurement standard or procurement procedure that basically stated this. If you have an AS 9100 certificate, you can send your material in. We don't have to send inspection out to you to look at your facilities. Doesn't matter. That's what it basically said. And in 2009, as I told you, the FAA, who sits right over by Boeing and Lockheed, seceded inspection. They're in bed together, probably drinking their martinis as your plane is going down. And you say, we're fucked. If you're going down in a plane saying we're fucked, that's a quality term. That means either the construction of the aircraft was no good or the pilots were no good. It's usually one or the other. And here he is, David Calhoun. David Calhoun, Boeing. And he's got a lot of problems with the 737 MAX, the 777, and 787. In my circles that I travel throughout the country, this is the saying, if it's Boeing, don't get going. Anyway, here's Boeing. Boeing is a good one too. You have Lockheed, who can't get their quality straight, okay? Because let me just say this, as a quality professional, we quality people are the first ones corporate America gets rid of. And then the CEO gets a gold-plated 9-iron for his golf clubs. Yes. And probably a 1,000-bottle champagne bottle. But yeah, that's what they do. They get rid of quality. So you have Boeing over here, right? You have Lockheed that has problems with their quality. After 800 ships, you figure maybe after 10, 15, they can get it ironed out. You know, you'll get a couple inspection issues, quality issues within the manufacturing cycle, but not after 800 ships. And here goes the best one about Boeing. They fudged documentation. Can you see that? Boeing fudged it. And they went back to our government to ask them to reopen up and evaluate the contract for the replacement Black Hawk. And you got a company like this fudging documentation. Let's invite him back. We have Mr. Scott Donnelly, the CEO of Textron. How you doing, Scott? Thank you very much for coming. And we also have Mr. Mitch Schneider. And we're going to bring out these aircraft. And by the way, because Lockheed Martin proved itself not being able to keep its technology locked up on its computer in 2009, in 2013, when Lockheed and Bell were working together on the aircraft, okay, in 2009, in 2013, when they were working on the aircraft, the V-280 Valor, and they had to exchange blueprints. They had to do that. They're going to tell you no, but let me just say this. There's going to be a video in the description that shows at a Chinese exhibition on military aircraft. You have both copies of the Defiant SB-1, the Lockheed Sikorsky or Sikorsky Lockheed and Boeing derivative, and you'll also have the V-280 Valor. The Chinese, looks like they already got it. Another thing is Lockheed is going after the throat of Bell and via the government. There's a problem, Bell, because they have the Department of Justice on board behind them. Also, you have the factor that that the Department of Defense, the ones who are in bed with the GAO, Government Accounting Office, sits right over by Lockheed, Sikorsky, and right over by Boeing. What do you think they're doing right now? Boeing and Lockheed are a powerhouse as compared to Bell. Bell is a small organization compared to the largest #1 military contractor. There's an issue. We also discovered as we went further with our discovery when it came to ANSI ANAB, they are underwriters for the International Accreditation Forum Incorporated in Delaware, and also an underwriter. An underwriter is any party that evaluates and assumes another party's risk for a fee. We also discovered to solidify this thing about underwriting, and the reason why I do this is because you ask these jokers about what are you doing as far as quality certification, they will say, we only certify the system, we don't certify the product. By them being an underwriter, that negates everything. The only problem is that you have the American Bar Association intimately involved with ANSI. You have the Department of Justice intimately involved with ANSI. And here's a contract of a government contract, a standard operating work order, that states over here that ANSI ANAB are underwriters for the IAF. So that means if anything goes wrong, you can go back and legally take care of the situation. And the final thing is this. And this video is about how will layoffs affect Bell Helicopter and Sikorsky. QA Authority Daryl Guberman Explains. It appears that, they had this in the wings about laying off people. Lockheed did through their rotary wing divisions. And that's an issue because all that does, and I'm going to say this as plain as day, the people who work for Sikorsky, Lockheed, and Lockheed in general, the people who work for Textron and Bell Helicopter, the CEO, whether they win the contract, whether Bell wins the contract or not, those two people, Mr. Connolly and Mr. Schneider, will get some sort of bonus, but you employees will suffer. If Lockheed ends up losing the contract, Lockheed, Sikorsky, and Boeing, you'll have David Calhoun, Mr. Lemma at Sikorsky, and you'll have also Mr. Tassett at Lockheed Corporate. They will get their bonuses, and you, the people, will suffer. My heart goes out to the manufacturing people, the engineering, and others within the context of those companies, and I'm going to say this. You can love your house, you can love your cat, you can love your dog, you can love your pants, you can love fishing. But no matter how much you love your corporation, it will never love you back. My telephone number is 203-556-1493 or Daryl, TQRS, @yahoo.com. I'm sorry for the length of this, but I thought it was very important. I thank you.